This miniseries begins with Haruki Nakano, an ordinary young man who lives with his 4 sisters. One morning, he is awakened by the sound of his alarm, having fallen asleep while helping his younger sister Yayoi study. At one point, we see Uzuki and Satsuki, the younger sisters, who enter the room and ask Haruki to help wake Yayoi up. To do so, the younger sisters begin tickling him, causing Haruki to accidentally touch Yayoi, causing her to wake up. Yayoi, upon being woken up, hits Haruki. Just then, Mutsuki, the oldest sister of all, enters and scolds Yayoi and Haruki for the ruckus. To put an end to the fight, she threatens to call her mother, which makes them immediately stop as they fear that her mother will take away their allowance. Then we see Haruki getting ready in the bathroom to go to study, while his sisters keep insisting that he let them get ready first. Finally, the episode ends with the 4 siblings leaving their house in the direction of their respective schools. One night, Haruki is watching a horror movie when he notices some eyes watching him from outside his door, which scares him greatly. In the next scene, we see Yayoi changing and he notices exactly the same eyes as before. When he looks through the door of his room, he realizes that they are Uzuki and Satsuki. The girls explain to him that they are working on an assignment about their family where they have to describe each of their relatives. Then Mutsuki appears and starts complaining, insisting that they must do their homework well. The little girls catch up, and when they finish, they begin to read what they have prepared. They start with Haruki, who mentions that he's the only boy in the family present, saying that he is a geek addicted to video games, not athletic at all, and scared. Then they move on to Yayoi, highlighting that she is good at sports, and end with Mutsuki, describing her as a great example for her sisters, an imposing figure, good at studies as well as sports. At the end of the day, the girls return home from school happy and tell Haruki that they got the best grade on their homework. On another day after school, Haruki comes home and upon entering her room, he finds Mutsuki asleep in her bed, dressed only in her uniform top and skirt. Our protagonist tries to wake her up but is unsuccessful, so he decides to leave just as her sisters arrive. At that moment, Mutsuki wakes up and appears in her uniform, but it is very noticeable that one of her stockings is down. Haruki, trying to help her, rushes in to fix it, causing Yayoi to misunderstand the situation and hit him. After that, Yayoi goes off to play and Mutsuki, along with Yayoi, retreats to change, leaving Haruki a bit confused and beaten up, feeling bad since he only tried to protect his older sister's image. At the end of the day, Mutsuki heads off to take a shower, and before she goes in, Haruki gives her a towel, remembering a previous incident where she forgot her underwear and sent him to get it, but was seen by Yayoi, who also hit him. Later, Haruki returns to his room and sees Mutsuki lying on his bed reading a magazine, wrapped only in the towel he had given her. He complains to her, but she tells him that she finds it uncomfortable to get dressed right after a shower and that she plans to stay like that for a while. However, she falls asleep. In this chapter, we see all the family members shopping at the supermarket. Yayoi suggests buying rice first, and Haruki agrees, but not much, and even though he has a hard time taking the rice, he decides to take it anyway. Then Mutsuki and the girls are attracted by a free sample and approach with adorable expressions to get some of these small samples. Mutsuki apologizes for the little girl's behavior, but she also ends up agreeing and trying a sample. After that, they visit several stalls one by one, trying what they offer. And in the end, one of the vendors gives some things to the girls. They realize that they still need to buy curry, and although Haruki likes spicy curry, they decide to choose a mild one so that the girls can enjoy it without any problem. When they get home, they prepare dinner and the girls have the impression that the dish could be spicy, but in the end, they like it a lot because, indeed, it is not spicy. We spend another day with Satsuki waiting for Haruki to come home. When he arrives, the girl hands him a manga which they both read. Haruki asks Satsuki to read it first or at the same time, but she prefers not to, so Haruki accepts her decision. Later, he meets Uzuki and asks her if she's going to read that manga, but she says that she wouldn't understand it. Then Haruki asks her to tease his sister a little, but Uzuki corrects him, mentioning that their teacher has taught them not to do bad things, while putting clothespins in Haruki's hair. In the end, Satsuki finishes reading, and the 2 girls go outside to play, leaving Haruki with the clothespins still on his head. Later, Satsuki wants to go inside the house, and when they do, they turn on the TV just in time to watch their favorite anime. Haruki warns the little girl to get away from the screen a bit, but she doesn't pay much attention to him. At that moment, Yayoi enters and explains that when Satsuki is very focused on something that interests her, she doesn't listen to anyone. Uzuki also mentions that Satsuki knows when the anime she likes will be broadcast without needing to look at the time. When the anime she was watching ends, the girls go to play in her room, and we see the little girls having fun. Satsuki mentions that the promises she makes to her are very important. At the end of the day, Satsuki continues watching anime, while Haruki gets bored and asks Uzuki if it bothers him that his sister ignores him. Uzuki answers that he won't do anything that his sister doesn't want. In the next chapter, we notice that the exams are approaching and we see a worried Haruki entering his room where he finds Mutsuki on his bed with a rather strange pose. She tells him that she will teach him everything. but he refuses, thinking this with a double meaning, stating that he can study alone. Mutsuki is saddened and mentions that he also asked Yayoi to teach her, but it turns out that Yayoi has disappeared. However, we later see her studying in her room, and just then, Yayoi takes the opportunity to ask him to teach her, since he thinks he's a good teacher. Haruki agrees, but soon Haruki realizes that Yayoi does not understand anything of what he is teaching. He reviews his past exams and realizes that his sister's problem is multiplication. Haruki decides that Yayoi should write all the multiplication tables on a sheet of paper so that she can practice what she fails. At that moment, the little girls come in to say goodbye because they are going to sleep, so the sisters wish Yayoi luck on her exam. However, the girls tell him that they got the best grades on their math exam, which makes Yayoi feel even worse. The next day, Yayoi comes home and tries to avoid Haruki when he asks her about her exam, causing him to suspect that she did poorly on the test. However, he stops her, and as they try to escape, they both trip and Haruki falls on top of his sister. But just then, Mutsuki appears, who sees them in that situation and freezes, thinking due to a misunderstanding that it is her fault for having asked them to get along better. One day inside the house, the little girls are wearing their swimsuits. Yayoi asks them why they are wearing them, and they tell her that they have swimming class that day. This sparks interest in Yayoi, and she takes the opportunity to tell Mutsuki that she really wants to go to the beach, but Mutsuki explains that it is not yet the season to be able to go. Despite that, Yayoi comes up with a good idea. Later, Haruki arrives home and feels that it is very hot. When he enters, he is surprised to find his sisters dressed in swimsuits. The situation is misinterpreted, and at that moment, Yayoi hits him and calls him a perv, taking advantage of this to get angry with him for not going to the beach last year because he had to take entrance exams. Haruki tells him that this summer they can go, but Yayoi reminds him that now it is her turn to take her exams. After this, Haruki heads to his room, but Yayoi throws her swimsuit at him and forces him to change to go outside. Later, the girls decide to use an inflatable pool they had when they were little. However, when they try, they realize that they no longer fit well in it because of how much they have all grown. Despite that, they manage to find ways to have fun inside it. When evening falls, the little girls return home and find the three brothers very cold. In this chapter, Satsuki is reading a manga about twins who look nothing alike, and since they don't look alike, they think they are not sisters. At that moment, Uzuki enters and comments that she thinks she's adopted, since if they really were sisters, they should at least look alike. Suddenly, Haruki appears in the room and realizes that his sisters are very sad. Satsuki asks Haruki if he thinks she's adopted, and he skeptically shows them a picture of Mutsuki when she was little where she looked identical to her. Accepting that she's not adopted, Uzuki begins to doubt, since Haruki looks like her father, Yayoi looks like her mother, and the same with Satsuki and Mutsuki, but she doesn't look like anyone. Determined to find answers, Uzuki goes to her parents' room in search of some proof. At that moment, Mutsuki sees her very curious about the case, and upon entering the room, she shows her a picture of her grandmother who looks identical to Uzuki. Just then, Yayoi enters looking sad and tells them that her grades were low again. She says that everyone gets good grades except her and assures that this means that she must be adopted because she's not as good at math as her brothers are. The next day, we see Uzuki running towards Haruki to hug him in a surprising way. Just at that moment, Satsuki also appears, and when she sees her sister, Satsuki asks her what she is doing, to which Uzuki, nervous, answers that it is time for dinner and avoids explaining the moment. During dinner, Uzuki sits next to Haruki, which causes him to suspect that she has put something in his food. With a little fear, he begins to eat, but realizes that his food is in perfect condition, so he calms down. After finishing dinner, Haruki goes to his room to sleep, and upon entering, he meets Uzuki, who asks him to read her a story. Uzuki, in a moment of sincerity, tells him that she loves him, which leaves Haruki very confused. At that moment, Satsuki appears and shows Haruki the anime that she had been watching the day before, in which a girl played a joke on her brother. Satsuki explains that Uzuki was doing the same thing, which relieves Haruki. The next day, Uzuki confirms that she was indeed playing with him. One night, Haruki wakes up to find Mutsuki on top of him. Out of intrigue, he asks her why they were in that situation, and she explains that she needed to ask him a favor. She wants him to Mutsuki tells him that at her school they are preparing a play, and since no one wanted to play the role of the princess, she accepted. But now she must kiss the prince, and she has never kissed anyone. So she doesn't know how to fake it, and that's why she went looking for help. At the moment, when they are about to kiss, Haruki reacts, pushing his sister away and telling her that they can't do that because they are siblings. Mutsuki falls silent and runs off to his room. After a moment, Haruki feels that he should apologize for how he expressed himself, so he goes to her. However, Mutsuki turns around holding the play script and tells him that there is actually no kiss scene because he had mixed up the roles, which explained his earlier reaction. It was another night and Haruki was lying in front of Yayoi's bedroom door, seeing her and asking for help because he feels bad, unable to return to his room. Yayoi takes him to her room and he tells her she should go rest because she has school the next day. Despite disagreeing with leaving him alone, she agrees, though she's very worried about her brother's current state. The next day in the dining room, all the sisters are gathered and the youngest asks about Haruki. Yayoi tells them he's sick. Meanwhile, in Haruki's room, he tries to concentrate on not wetting the bed as he really needs to go to the bathroom, but he can't move and finally falls asleep. When he wakes up, he sees Yayoi taking care of him. Haruki thanks her for coming back. Yayoi tries to take care of him alone, and while she's taking off his shirt to wipe the sweat off, all the other sisters arrive unexpectedly and see Haruki and Yayoi in a very compromising position, leading to misunderstandings. They start to tease Yayoi, who angrily leaves the room trying to explain, but before that, she hits Haruki, who falls back onto his bed in pain and still sick. In this chapter, the sisters are watching a very scary horror movie while Haruki is playing video games. Yayoi surprisingly expresses that she wants to sleep with him. Haruki, thinking his sister is sick, decides to take her to his room out of concern. On the way, he meets the two little sisters, who are going to the bathroom and ask Haruki to watch them while they're there. Despite his initial refusal, the little ones start crying, forcing him to agree, leaving Haruki baffled by their behavior. Afterwards, Haruki returns to his room and notices Mutsuki asleep in his bed. When he tries to wake her up, she hugs him. At that moment, the other sisters enter the room and decide they will sleep with him tonight. They all settle down on the floor to sleep, and Haruki thinks he doesn't dislike the idea of everyone sleeping together from time to time. The next day, Haruki tells his sisters they can count on him, but they ignore him. Laughing, they comment it's better not to watch horror stuff for a while, which explains why they decided to sleep with him. Then in the OVA of this anime, all the characters have gone to a public bath and where the little sisters are excited about the idea of drinking latte after bathing. Despite the excitement, their older sisters warn them that they should shower first. During this process, Yayoi feels embarrassed while wearing a towel, and Uzuki, in a moment of mischief, quickly takes the towel from her by running with it in her hand, which causes a fight between them. Mutsuki intervenes to calm them down. Later, everyone enjoys taking a shower and then gets into the pool with hot water. Meanwhile, Haruki is in his intrusive thoughts, imagining funny and very peculiar scenarios with his sisters, although he reflects on how difficult it is for him to get excited in that situation. Upon leaving the public bath, the girls are excited to be able to drink their latte, but are disappointed to receive it in a box instead of a bottle. A lady at the store explains to them that they have changed the presentation. The girls with their boxes of latte decide that next time they go, they will look for a place that offers the coffee in bottles. Haruki notices Yayoi drinking her latte and suddenly starts making fun of her by comparing the size of her breasts to Mutsuki's. This causes Yayoi to run away crying, but despite the little fight, everyone ends up having a lot of fun during the day.